పరిస్థితి. ఇప్పుడు దావోస్ వెళ్దాం, అక్కడ ఏపీ సీఎం జగన్ మాట్లాడుతున్నారు. లైవ్ చూద్దాం.
And become the center of the world for green hydrogen. The cost of green hydrogen is roughly around $4 to $4.25 per kilogram. Our challenge is to bring it down to about roughly $2.25 to $2.5 per kilogram by 2025 and bring it down to $1 per kilogram by 2030. This would mean that you keep enhancing your renewables to massive scales at lower prices, because in the cost of green hydrogen, 70% is renewable, 10% is the cost of electrolyzer, 20% is the balance of plant. Therefore, if you keep doing renewables, you will end up with the duck curve, which is what California faced. Its power grid could not manage so much of renewables. So you have to do 24/7 green power. And the best methodology for that is that what the Honorable Chief Minister in his very dynamic fashion said, that you have wind, you have solar, you have pump storage, and then use that to crack and produce green hydrogen, which will be the cheapest form of green hydrogen. Now what Andhra has done, 1650 megawatt of pump storage with solar and wind is the biggest of its kind in the world. And if Andhra is able to do this to 23,000 megawatt, that means that India will become the center of decarbonization in the world. And that is what Andhra holds a model for the rest of the world in terms of decarbonizing your economy. Decarbonization cannot happen with just electric mobility. It cannot happen unless and until we understand that electricity is just 18% of energy. 82% of energy is hard to abate sectors. It's refinery, it's steel plants, it's fertilizer, it's long distance transport. They cannot run on electricity. If it's renewable energy, they can't run on electricity. They run on, grey hydrogen, or they run on fossil fuels, or they run on coal. So you have to make 82% of your energy, which is hard to abate sector, green. And the hard to abate sector can only be made green with green hydrogen. And that is the challenge.
Concept. What Andhra Pradesh AP is trying to showcase is probably going to be the torchbearer, or Andhra Pradesh could actually be the torchbearer showcasing this concept. Just before I had come here to Davos, a couple of days before that, I had gone there. I had gone to a particular project in Kurnool, 5,230 megawatt of integrated pump storage, a renewable project. You have, in one single location, you have 1650 megawatt of pump storage capacity, which is actually a battery. 1650 megawatt of battery. And then to support that battery, you have 3000 megawatt of solar project, which is coming up right beside. And then you also have another 900 megawatt of wind power, also to support this battery. 5,230 megawatt in total. And, this is the kind of the scale at which things are being thought after itself speaks volumes about the direction in which we're heading. What it does is, you build a dam, and the quantum of water which is utilized is on just 1 TMC. Just 1 TMC of water is used to drop the water, to generate power during the peak hours, and to lift the water back into the reservoir during the non-peak hours using the solar and the wind power capacities. That's a simple concept. And at the end of it, you would have a 1650 megawatt of firm power. That's power that could be given 24 hours all through the day. And and then the most important aspect is it's economical, it's sustainable, it's feasible. To generate the power from solar and wind, and then during the non-peak hours using this power to pump the water back. As simple a concept as this. What Andhra Pradesh has is, it's got a capacity to build these pump storage capacities to the extent of 33,000 megawatt. We're just talking about 1650 megawatt of pump storage that I had just laid the foundation stone a couple of days before I had come here. And now we're talking about a potential in Andhra Pradesh which is 33,000 megawatt available for the whole of the globe to come over and probably participate. This is the concept. And just imagine what things can be done. You're not only, the conventional industry can convert into green industry. And just not that alone. You can talk about using this power to create hydrogen, to create ammonia, NH3, hydrogen, desalinate, get to the coast, desalinate the water, electrolysis, and from water you generate hydrogen. All this in the days to come, in the years to come, would become reality. And Andhra Pradesh is there, right there, welcoming you to become part of this grand endeavor. I think I'll just pass on the mic for the panelists to take over, and probably they would throw more light, better light.
Renewable project. For many reasons, I think you've heard a lot today. It's really a force in creating a friendly business environment. But I think also the vision of having direct pumped hydro storage. I had a chance to visit Kurnool, and it's very impressive what is happening down there. I think I urge all of you to visit and see really what is happening on the ground in Andhra Pradesh. And just going there, you feel the energy, the dynamism. And so our first renewable project, it's a 4,500 crore investment, $650 million, 250 megawatts of 24-hour round-the-clock power. Why is that interesting? It reduces carbon emissions in our facility in India by 1.5 million tons. What is 1.5 million tons? It's 350,000 cars off the road. Okay? So it's real direct, it's immediate impact, it's interesting for the business to do. We plan to double it. I'm very excited by my meeting this afternoon, and on just seeing the progress that we have made. We plan to double that investment. We'll probably finalize that decision in the next few months. And as we get more and more renewable power, 33,000 megawatts, we can move into hydrogen. Because if the power is low cost, the hydrogen becomes low cost, it's cost effective for the steel industry to utilize, and the demand is significant. So I think we're all off to a good start. I think there are tremendous ingredients available in Andhra, the whole ecosystem in India, and we can really lead the way in terms of decarbonizing not only the Indian steel business, but also use some of that knowledge, maybe export some of the hydrogen to other parts of the world.
Aditya, thank you very, very much indeed. This takes us logically to you, because the story we've just heard is that renewable energy is the underpinning of so much else. We need renewable energy for the direct drawing of electricity in order to be able to transition away from coal and gas power stations, but we also need it to be able to convert to hydrogen, which then becomes a storage mechanism, which is critically important to be able to overcome intermittency in renewable assets. And then we need it, for example, to create ammonia, which then drives the fertilizer industry, which goes into agriculture and shipping and so on. So it's all underpinned by the very thing that Greenco is investing in. So tell us what you are going to do to help save the world.
Thanks, Richard, and good afternoon, everyone, ladies and gentlemen. I would say we are a little over a decade-old company as a Greenco. We had a very modest start. From the day one onwards, we have always been trying to develop renewables with the grid parity, and we always came up with some innovative thought process. How do we make the energy available at the right pricing, right location, and how do we move this green electron? To start with, initially says we had a small hydros which we built in a cascading manner, which made the whole hydro energy available much cheaper at the time comparing with the thermals. And later we developed a large-scale wind farms and brought down the actually GEs and Gameshas to do them the localization, and created in long-distance transmission lines to unlock the medium wind speed sites, and made sure that we gave a long-term agreements to the GEs and Gameshas and made them to manufacture in India and bring them the lower costs. Later stage, we developed a hybrid wind and solar sites to unlock the better value creation and brought down the price of the hybrid renewables sub 4 rupee levels and 3 rupee levels down the line. Understanding the whole energy available at such a low cost, how do we make them available round the clock and make them to be in journeying towards peak hour management? That's when we were able to unlock this hydro pump storages. And thanks to the Government of India and Government of Andhra Pradesh under the leadership of Honorable Chief Minister, we were able to successfully unlock the whole challenges we had to start developing the whole project. So that's it. Thanks a lot.
And thank you very much indeed. So Florence, Deso Systems is a leading software business, and a huge amount of your design and manufacturing software goes into the sorts of industries that we're talking about here. How do you see this from your perspective? I also know you're very active in the state.
Definitely, and thank you very much, Mr. Chief Minister, for inviting me to this panel. What do we do at Deso System? We are basically a software company that is doing virtual twin. And why are virtual twin interesting for sustainability? Because if you have the virtual twin of a product, be it a car, be it a plane, be it a bridge, then you can design everything for sustainability. You can test in the virtual world different materials, different processes, and you can choose the most sustainable to implement the most sustainable option. In the beginning of last year, we released a study with Accenture that shows that if we apply virtual twin to 5 use cases in car, high-tech, pharmaceutical industry, consumer good, and transportation, then we could save 7.5 gigaton of CO2 by 2030, which is the equivalent of 1 year of emission of the transportation industry. So it's big. And why is it big? Because basically 80% of the impact of a product is decided at the design phase. So if you optimize at the design phase for sustainability, you can totally change the game. So that's what we are doing with our Indian partners in India, and we are very lucky to be working in Andhra Pradesh. And it's very efficient. We've seen amazing projects here on electric vehicles, two wheels or 4 wheels electric vehicle, but also example in consumer good, in packaging companies, and we think it's a massive disruption when it comes to make the world and the industry more sustainable.
Thank you very much, Florence. So we actually have plenty of time. So I'd like to cycle back and come back to a few of the points that have been made in the opening comments, and we may well have some time for some questions. So if you have a burning question and you want to in a few minutes wave very clearly at me, we will try and bring you in. Aditya, I want to come back to something that you referenced to the fact that obviously ArcelorMittal is operating across a number of different jurisdictions, and then you referenced specifically why the attractions of investing in the state of Andhra Pradesh. Just from your experience across different jurisdictions, what are the things that you're looking for in terms of policy support that makes the difference between somewhere being really attractive to invest in versus somewhere else that you might not prioritise in the same way?
Sure. Richard, let me talk about the steel business, because the renewable business has different policy imperatives, right? For renewable, first of all, you need ease of business, you need land acquisition, and the most important is obviously good wind and good sun, right? Which Andhra has, all of those, ease of doing business, land availability, pump storage. For steel, it's a different it's different dynamics. For the steel industry, I think the most important is to have a level playing field. Okay, so we want to compete with other steel companies which have the same imperative to decarbonize, because fundamentally, as you decarbonize, your cost is going to rise. And how are we going to be successful in places like Europe, where they keep on adding carbon taxes if there is no carbon border adjustment? Because then what is going to happen is steel companies will not decarbonize and export their steel into Europe, and we will not be helping the environment because steel companies in Europe will shut down. So I think that's the first thing. So if India decides to put a carbon tax or create certain incentives to decarbonize, it should be done in a way that is level for all competition. The other option, if you don't create a level playing field, is to stimulate green demand, green steel demand, right? And there are many ways of doing that, through regulatory support. So does automotive need 25% of all their steel? Should it be green? When governments put out bids for infrastructure, is there a mandate that it needs to be made through green steel? So you need market forces to create the demand, because as you heard from me, we have to spend $10 billion, and steel is capital intensive, steel is highly cyclical, steel is not the most profitable business in the world. Without a level playing field, without creating either regulatory support or market forces for demand, it is not obvious for the steel industry to decarbonize. I mean, these technologies are there, but it's not like these technologies were invested last year. They were there 10 years ago, 20 years ago. But fundamentally, moving away from coal to gas or to hydrogen is more expensive. And so what are the incentives or the policy framework to make that feasible? We believe that governments are acting in that direction. So we see strong policy support. And so if you look at our $10 billion investment, we have already announced $6.5 billion, excluding the renewable in Andhra. And that's really in Spain, in France, in Belgium, in Germany as well, and in Canada. We are very impressed with what the Canadian government is doing. And so those are the first 4 jurisdictions in which we have started our decarbonizing journey.
That's super, thank you very much. And I spend a huge amount of my time in the company of infrastructure investors, and indeed in a conversation only last week, which was specifically around the hydrogen economy. The infrastructure investors were saying the challenges here are we don't have a whole market for it yet. So it's isolated investments in different companies and countries, and they're worried about the technology risk still. So the sorts of underpinnings that you're talking about, I think, are really critical. Amitabh, if I can come back to you, I mean, you've had a distinguished career in the Indian civil service. You probably know better than almost anybody how to incentivise things in an economy. What's your reflection on what are those real levers that are going to accelerate and support the sorts of investments that Aditya's talking about?
So my belief is that companies which do not go digital, which do not go green, will find it very difficult to survive beyond 2026. And actually, if you look at the trend in the last 2-3 years, only companies